This is a basic topic. We've talked about it some, and I want to have you practice, particularly some of you, to practice this afternoon this skill when you're doing your observed coaching that's going to be videotaped. Because this afternoon, I'm going to give you all the opportunity to get into groups, coach each other, and have it videotaped and critiqued from your colleagues. And for some of you, one skill that you might want to practice is note-taking. So I want to revisit note-taking, give you some new ways to take notes, and encourage you to do it. So one way to take notes with your client is what we've been demonstrating during this workshop that Stan does. And he's a master at it. He does it for me all the time. Sometimes he does it when I see the screen. He's in Colorado, I'm in California, and we just do screen sharing. Screen sharing is very inexpensive these days. You can do it with your client. So when I'm looking at the screen and looking to my future or creating something, I see it appear before me as Stan is typing, even though he's hundreds of miles away. He's typing, I'm speaking, and he's capturing my thinking. It is so wonderful. Now, periodically, I'll even take the mouse and I'll type. So he types, I type. It looks like this. Stan, so type this. Let's see. Okay, I got it. Now, we could also say, so he gets a line, I get a line, and then sometimes we both try and move the cursor at the same time. And it's frustrating. So that's one type of note-taking. Another type of note-taking that I've been experimenting with lately looks like this. And the pen looks like this. You turn the pen on by pressing that button, and then whatever I write is stored in the pen. Later, when I put this pen on the dock, it downloads a file that looks just like that page. Because there's a camera right below the pen tip. And the camera records what I've written. So for example, I was describing to one of my clients this concept of be and do and have, and how they actually overlap. Our being, or our values and attitudes, overlap with our circumstances or the results that we produce, overlap with the actions that we take. So while I was describing that, I wrote it, download the pen, and he has this entire symbol to refer back to. But wait, there's way more. I take this pen and I hit down here where it says record, and now you notice that it says record and it's clicking off the seconds. So now what I do is I'm describing this particular process or whatever I write, and while I write, it's recording my voice. And it's linking the recording of my voice to exactly the notes that I'm taking. So at the end of the call, I can send a handwritten notes via the computer, a PDF file, to my client, along with the sound file. When the client gets the notes, he can take his cursor and move it to wherever it was on the page that he wants to remember what was being said when that was being written. Amazing. I can put the recording on pause. Now I'm not recording it. I can put it back on record, and now I'm recording whatever I'm writing here. Now, of course, if I was on a speakerphone, I could also be recording the client. No, I wouldn't do that, of course, without the client's permission. There's also a plug here where I can plug in a microphone that goes to the phone, so I wouldn't even have to have the client on speakerphone. So on the screen is the example of how this works. I think if we turn on the sound, you can hear my speaking.
Here we are, having it. You're talking, I'm talking, and we can date this if we want. And I can take my notes, or I can even draw things on here. You might remember from 3 years ago this coaching pyramid that represents the model, and here is, first of all, before assisting others, is to build yourself up.
Can you see how, as I speak, my words, the light green becomes dark green? And I can move around here, so if I click right there, it skips to the place. Like if I click up there, it clicks to the place on the recording when I was speaking.
And we can date this if we want. And
so that's how that works.
What's
that product called?
This is called LiveScribe, L-I-V-E-S-C-R-I-B-E. And you think, well, it's got to cost a fortune. Well, I don't know. It was somewhere between $100 to $200. And to me, that's no fortune. I know people that pay that much for a regular pen that doesn't have a tape recorder, that doesn't have a camera, and that doesn't automatically download it all on the internet for future information. We're talking about note-taking. Maybe sharing a screen, maybe recording so that your client has your notes when we're done. Of course, I wouldn't want to pass up the idea of suggesting the possibility of writing down on 3x5s what your client wants. And I've done this many, many times, particularly in face-to-face visioning situations when the client's there. So rather than asking the client to write, I just interview him. I say, well, what do you want? And he says, and I write it. Of course, I write it in the middle of the card with the corners empty. And then I say, what else do you want? And I write it. They say, well, what do you want with regard to your family? And I write it. What do you want with regard to your health? And I write it. So that's another option. We're just looking at all the ways to take notes. And of course, I believe the best is to ask the client. I told you recently that I got to meet with my brother-in-law. He asked for the meeting, and which is very unusual because he's not a man that often asks for help. Even though growing up as a dwarf and not being able to walk very far, he's gotten a lot of help. His mother, my mother-in-law, is just an amazing woman. She's 86 years old, and she's cared for him all his life. So you'd think he might be good at asking for help, but he's not. But he called me, and he said, when I'm out there at Christmas, I want to sit down with you, and he says, I want to get what you do. And I said, okay, well, I'll be happy to have you get what I do. And he says, and I want you to get some big, that butcher block paper in a roll, and I want to be able to draw on it and write down what I want in my future. And I thought, oh man, I don't know where to get that. I said, well, I've got some big flip charts. How about if I'll get you a big flip chart and you can write on that? He said, no, I want a roll of paper. Okay. You know, I didn't do that, but that's what's going on inside because, you know, I ask him, what do you want? And I want to give people what they want, but I realized that I couldn't appreciate it. But what I did was I went and got a bunch of these, and I tore them off, and I taped them together, and I rolled them up. So he got there, and I had my roll of paper, and I had my flip chart, and then I also I have a big screen in my office, not quite that big, but I have a big screen with my computer connected to it, and I had that ability to take notes that way. So I, of course, gave him the options. I said, well, here's some cards, here's the flip chart, here's the roll, there's my screen. And he says, well, I told you what I wanted. I want the roll. So we roll it out, and he starts drawing. The first thing he does is draw his body, and then he draws a house, and then he starts writing. And I realized that he wanted to take notes that way. And that worked for him. So what I'm wanting to do here is encourage you to take notes for your client and take them the way your client wants. Because I've got my way, but when I tried to impose my way on him, that's not good. He knew what he wanted, and when he did it, it's amazing what he revealed and what he drew. And then we had this rolled up vision of his life and his future. So that's the topic. I want to pause, get any input you have about the topic, and then we're going to go to a different topic. So what questions or comments do you have on note-taking in coaching?
Note-taking is really powerful, and how you share it can be more powerful if you have a structure already that you just fill in, so like a form that you fill in every time. So I know
Okay,
Lorna
that's
in particular has one that then when she shares the notes back with me, they're really beautiful and clear, and it's just much easier for me to get value out of them.
great. And what's the structure look like, Rachel? It's a good idea.
Celebrations, action plans, desires, discovery
cool.
intentions.
Yeah. So you're saying that the coach has the form, fills it out so that when the client gets it back, it's already organized into celebrations and intentions. And yeah, great. Good idea.
What I did recently with the client that I really enjoyed was just having, I didn't have 3x5 cards at the moment, so I had my little memo pads. And when he first talked about what he wanted in the call, because he's not good about doing the prep form. I've sent it several times, and so it's just, not the way that he likes to work. So that's okay. Was to what 3 things he really wanted to get out of the call, and then to periodically throughout the call to go back to my notes and saying, okay, this is what I heard you say that you wanted, and how is what we're talking about, leading to these things, and where are you with those now? And it was really good because he really appreciated that not only did I take down the specific words he said, the very specific words, but that it brought him really back to what value was he creating in the call, and where did he really want to go with the call. And I had forgotten really about doing that. And I realized, like in myself preparing to come here and working with my coach and having my coach take notes on what I wanted before and then sending to me so that I could keep adding to it. And also, I love doing notes after the call. So like if my client says, gee, I'd like to remember some of what my agreements, or as Rachel said, action plans or whatever, what my intentions are for next, to send that out to them in addition to them sending back their discovery and intentions. And so one of my public promises is that I'm going to use this technique more often. I've kind of slid away from it, and it got easier to just have the call and not do the follow-up. But I think there's a richness for me in reminding me how powerful the session was, and were there some things that I also could remind myself or the client about. And it's also for me now becoming a form of evaluating my own coaching.
Very
Did they
good.
get from it what they really wanted?
Thank you.
There's a mind mapping software, I think it's just called Mind Map, that I love because it's kind of a great brainstorming software where you can just hit on a topic and then you can drill down by going, it's just like drawing a mind map on a chart. I'm thinking of what he's talking about with the roll of paper. It's like working on a roll of paper, and then as you drill down on a topic, later, so you're drawing like you're drawing in a big piece of paper, and then later it'll fold into like a table of contents, or it'll fall out neatly later into something linear if you want it to, but you don't have to use it. So that's one. And the other one is called Prezi. You can use it for presentations or for kind of mind mapping, and it's a way to kind of have a big, huge piece of paper in front of you and just move in and out, move around on screens, and then you can move out and capture the whole picture, or you can zoom in on things. They're really easy to use, and they have trials on the web, and they're like a couple $100 each to buy. So if you're less of a linear thinker, they're kind of nice tools.
That's called Prezi.
P-R-E, it's either P-R-E-S-I or P-R-E-Z-I. Z-I. And they they have a sample online that you can try for free, and they're really fun to use. They're not that hard to figure out, and even for presentations, they're really great if you get tired of PowerPoint for using. And you can map and remap them any way you like, so you can keep changing your content. They're kind of fun.
Thanks, Kelly.